Welcome to the XNS Services Relayer video guides. This is a multi-episode series going over the very beginnings of what you need to get started with a relayer, all the way to powerful and complete deployments. In this episode, episode 1, we're covering the install process for Relayer UI on Linux. Before we get straight to it, a couple assumptions. You need to have seen episode 0, which covers the hardware and networking considerations for a relayer. This is very important, and I'm going to assume that you've seen it if you're still with us. If not, please pause the video and watch that instead. Moving forward, we'll head down to the Linux setup guide, and we'll head into the console page, and within the billing section, we'll need to add a valid payment method. This is required even if you're using a free tier if available. Back on the Linux Relayer UI setup page, the next couple of prerequisites are all having to do with Docker. I have a machine here that doesn't have Docker installed, and what we'll need to do is follow these Docker install steps in order to put us on the right path. I'll follow the link from the docs. Since this VM is using Ubuntu, I'll head straight into that docs guide. And from here, I'll copy paste a couple commands. And then begin installing the Docker engine. We should now be able to verify that Docker is installed with sudo docker ps. However, some of you may have picked up that we had to put sudo before our docker command would work. So we will return to the install page and follow the post-installation steps also linked. By following these quick couple steps, we no longer have to use sudo when we use docker commands. We've now verified that Docker is installed properly and with the proper permissions. We'll now move ahead to Docker Compose. In this case, it's not installed, so we'll copy this command and install it. Docker Compose version should now yield something resembling this. Running through our checklist, we're good to continue. What I'll now do is make a directory called Relayer. I'll then head into it, and we'll need to create two files from here. The first one is called dockercompose.yml. We'll copy in the run command, and although this can be tweaked, in this case it should work out of the box. We'll save and exit, and make our second file called .env. We'll copy paste it too straight from the docs, save and exit. That's now all we need to get a relayer working. We'll deploy these Docker containers with docker compose up-d. This is what we would expect to see running for the first time. The machine is now pulling from the Docker hub all of the container images that we need to run. Running docker ps, we should see our container listed. After a few moments, the dashboard should become visible if we visit it on a local IP. In this case, I'll type in my local IP address on port 8888. You may be prompted to sign in, but in this case, since I already signed into the console to set up billing, it carried over. This is what we expect to see when you open a Relayer dashboard for the first time. There are a couple important things that you'll want to consider. Let's head into configuration and check on the cache size. In this case, I've not allocated enough space to disk in my VM, so I'll bring it down to something like 50 gigabytes instead. You will also want to customize your endpoint access key and secret key. Please come up with better defaults than this. We'll click Save, head back to the dashboard, and we should be ready to start up for the first time. We can see the relayer come to life and Host.io start forming connections with storage providers. We can also visit the Minio endpoint URL. Since it is using a self-signed certificate by default, it should give us an invalid error. This is expected. However, in most web browsers, you should be able to continue anyway. We'll now log in with the credentials that we just created. And here, or in the file manager, we can create our first bucket. I'll name this one Shared. Buckets should carry over, and we can see this shared bucket from the Minio web interface. From Shared, I'll try uploading a sample file. This file was uploaded successfully. And we can also upload from the file manager. Now both items show up as we would expect. Having done this, we can also return to the dashboard and see that the cache has pending upload. This is what we would expect having just uploaded something to it. Within the docs are also the commands to start, stop, and update the container. In this case, to stop it properly, we would do docker compose stop. It is important that these commands are run from the directory containing our docker compose.yml and env file. Otherwise, they will not work. We can try updating with this command. However, in this case, it was already up to date, so it will just deploy instead. With our container back up, we can check on it in the dashboard, where we can also see that our previous file uploads have cleared. Also within the dashboard, you may want to check out the System tab, which has various pieces of system information, as well as the results of a quick network bandwidth test. You should now be comfortable starting, stopping, and updating containers, as well as navigating the UI, creating buckets, and uploading files. If, like I am, you're excited to start using your relayer, check out our next episode, episode 2, on connecting your first S3 app.